Phones away, class.
True.
Good discipline, Nathan. You tell
Okay.
them.
Trying to love my parents.
Love them after school. Okay. Okay, class. I'm going to show you some slides today, and I want you to look at these characters and see what you notice about them, and I want you to take note of what you see that is similar between each one. You may recognize this character. Okay. Between those three characters, what do you recognize that is the same? What are they doing, maybe with their body?
They're all standing.
They're all standing, right? Are they doing any sort of action? Are they moving? Are they running, jumping? They're still, right? So these characters are what is called static. And this means to not change. So in literature, you might hear there's a static character or a dynamic character. Static characters don't change. They usually stay the same throughout the story. But there can be static figures as well. Figures that they aren't drawn using crazy, wild, dynamic lines. They're drawn using static lines. So if I draw a circle, such as this, it's a little bit lopsided, but this circle is made of one line that doesn't vary between its thickness. It doesn't look like there are kind of lines going all over the place in different dynamics. It's one solid line. It doesn't look like it's moving. We can use that, and we can use static lines like this one to outline shapes and outline forms, and that's called contour lines. These lines can be just made of one solid line that doesn't look like it's varying in any form. So today, I'm going to give you this handout. And I'm also going to give you a piece of paper and a ruler. So you need a pencil for this. You do not have to draw Squidward. This handout is for reference. It explains a little bit from what I just said about how static characters should be drawn to look like they're not moving. So what you're going to do is what I've done here in this example. I'll bring it to you so you can see. But you're going to divide your paper into two halves using your ruler, and then you're going to draw two figures that I give you. You'll get separate figures, separate images. And you're going to try drawing those shapes using static lines. So the figure needs to be made up of shapes that don't look like they're dynamic. Their lines don't vary in thickness or size or length. And then you need to put your name on the back and give that to me. So remember, the first step is to split your paper in half so that you have two separate places to draw the figures. My example will be up here.
Do we need to do like details of the face and stuff, or just the?
Nope. So if you look at the example, the face isn't really drawn on. It's mostly, I've added some clothes, but the main idea is to get the shapes to look like the figure's not moving. They can be sitting, they can be looking off into the distance. Static characters and static lines are made to be still. So this drawing should take together to maybe 10-15 minutes. let's reach a stopping point with these drawings for today. And I want to talk a little bit about with each other what we think we've done well on our drawings and what we've done maybe that we can do better next time. So if you want to talk about that with each other, that would be great. I'll come around.
I was kind of doing like general mapping, and then I caught my proportions a little bit off. Like I tried starting a couple of times. So I could definitely do better on proportions next time.
I think it helped to like have an image to look at, but yeah, I think my proportions are pretty good, but I'm also
The figures that you have down don't look like they're doing any kind of movement or activity, so that's good. Very good. So if you've added your names to the back and finished those drawings, I will take them.
I'm just both like that.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
See you tomorrow. It's tomorrow, hello class. Okay, so if you remember from yesterday, we talked about static line and static figures not moving and looking as though they're still. So today we're going to talk about what's called dynamic line. And if static line is one continuous line that doesn't have any kind of variation to it, what might dynamic line mean? If something is dynamic, it means it's changing.
Energetic.
So maybe like varying with.
Right. So if a person is changing what they're doing some kind of
Motion.
movement or activity. So let's draw a circle again. So this, if you remember, is like using static line from what we talked about yesterday. But let's say I want to switch it up a little. And I just am trying to get the form of a circle using contour lines, and that's a circle. That's a circle made up of a lot of lines going in different directions that vary in length. They're dynamic. Okay? So if I have a line like this, similar to a static line, just for the sake of example, another way to think of this might be dynamic line is usually more sketchy, and the drawings should not be, they shouldn't look like they've taken a long time. Dynamic line should be quick, dynamic drawing should be fast and not a lot of detail. We just are looking to capture the shape of what we're seeing. So if I were to do an example for you, I know these pictures cannot be projected, so let's say I take this figure here. Everyone see? So what I want to do first is I want to decide, okay, there's the head. There's the shape of the head, it's circular, it's good. Then I want to make a line roughly from the top of his head to what I see as the bottom of his foot. So I'm going to follow the line of the spine, what I see for it to be, and down to the leg. It's a rough sketch, it's not measured out, it's dynamic, it's going to have a lot of lines. I'm just looking to capture the shape. Okay, so I'm going to map out, maybe here's the shoulders, here's the other shoulder. If you look at my drawing, it does not look like it has static lines in it. However, I'm following the lines that I've already made to help myself. Shoe. Okay. And that's a very, very rough sketch of the form that I see on the image. Your drawing should look sketchy, it should look made up of several lines. This is what we're shooting for today. We're also not shooting for facial features today, we're not shooting for values or colors. Even though dynamic line is capable of adding value, we're just looking for the outline of the figure we see. So just like yesterday, except today I want you to divide your paper up into 3 sections. And I also have an example up here. And some of your figures may cross the boundary lines you've made to define your sections, but try to and I'm going to give each of you 3 different figures to draw. A ballerina. Looks like
Sure. Yeah.
I think I'm missing a 3rd image of a running man, so for the sake of this, just do these 2. You're supposed to have 3 for 3 sections. That was my mistake. Oh, no, I do have it. There's your 3rd image. And I'll go ahead and pin my example back up if you need reference. And just like the handout I gave you yesterday, I want to give you another one that you can take with you if you need help on this later. These figures look like they're moving. The lines look very rough. Good job. Remember, you're not going for all the details. You just need the shape. class, make sure your name is on the back of those papers and I'll come around and pick them up.
Sad.
Thank you. And I'm going to give you a piece of paper to follow along with what I do on the board for this next part today. This is tomorrow. Day 3. Alright class, so as you can see on the projector, I have this picture of a man that I'm going to draw, and I want you to follow along with drawing. First, I have a slideshow that I want to show you. So, we know that figure drawing is really, really important to art, but we don't really know why. Figure drawing has been around since before, I guess we can record it. It's not in really history textbook when figure drawing started. It's prehistoric, meaning that it predates recorded history. So here we see a prehistoric figure drawing. And then also, as I mentioned, it goes all throughout history. So this is the Mona Lisa, which you may recognize. This is by Leonardo da Vinci. This is the Old Guitarist, which you should also recognize. This is by Picasso. And the last important thing is that this man was a Greek philosopher, and his name was Polykleitos. And you may be familiar with using heads as a unit, or as a measuring unit to draw figures. And that is what we're going to do today. So Polykleitos came up with this method that each average person is made of around 7 or 7.5 heads tall. So the way we do this is that first we establish how big our head is going to be. This lets us, by comparison, decide how big each head is going to be subsequently following. So we know that we need about 7 heads tall of a person whose each head is about this tall. So this is something you can use your eyes for. If you have time, you need to use a ruler and space out evenly. But for this project, go ahead and use your eyes and try to get these spaces as accurate as you can. So we need about 7 lines, 7 spaces, I'm sorry. So the goal is to have an even amount of space 7 times, about as even as you can make with looking at it with your eyes. And so for today, let's just go ahead and write off to the side the numbers of each space so that we can make sure that we have 7. Because if we go ahead and start thinking we have 7 and not, it'll be a lot harder to catch up. Okay, so if we're ready to move on, the first thing we're going to do is decide where the shoulders should be. So in correspondence with these spaces, the shoulders typically fall between heads 2 and 3. So our shoulders are going to be right around here. It varies a little bit with person to person. The elbows are typically close to the 4th head, usually just underneath your shoulder if your arms are straight down to your side. And our torso is going to end somewhere inside the space for the 5th head measurement. And your knees will typically end either at the top of the 6th head or somewhere just below that line. So let's go ahead and add our knees. Joints. And obviously our feet are going to be directly below our knees. There. So using this, we can do our static lines and make the shapes. So let's go ahead and get the shapes down. And arms are mostly like cylinders, so we're going to make these rectangular cylinder shapes to establish our arms. Oh, and I didn't mention it, but your hands are usually somewhere in the fifth head. important to measure these out first before you start detailing your figure so that you know it's proportionate and it's convincing. All right, we know our neck is a cylinder shape. Our shoulders kind of hang down. So if you remember, I said that our torso ends somewhere in the space of the fifth head. So I'm going to draw a line towards the top, right underneath the top of head number 5. And I'm going to make the torso kind of like a cylinder, like a big rectangular shape, like such. I'll give you a chance to jump to that. Something you might notice when you're doing this is when you're drawing the arm, like mine for example, as I'm drawing the arms and the body and things, I'm realizing, okay, well maybe I need to go back and make the head just to, resize it just a little bit. It still needs to fit into the space where the head is that I've already established because that's what I'm doing the rest of the body. So one way to do that is with dynamic lines. I can kind of readjust maybe how big I've established my head. So if you're noticing that when you're drawing, that's perfectly fine. Okay, and if we're ready, I'm going to go ahead and start the legs. So we know the legs are just directly underneath your torso, and we've already established where our knees are. So I'm going to go ahead and draw what would be the thighs, upper leg. And if it helps, you can make a little bit of a bigger indication of where the knees are supposed to be with your drawing, so that it doesn't look like your thigh just goes right straight down into your knees, your calves. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do is add the calves. Shins, and feet. Feet are a little bit tricky, but the goal is to get the general shape in. These figures do not need to be detailed perfect. Very good. Also very good. Very good. What's going on? What is going on?
My torso is so long.
Your torso is long?
Yeah. Maybe it's gonna be so thin. Maybe it's a little chubby. I feel like my lines probably weren't even.
Just try
That
making his,
looks good.
make his legs a little longer.
I think he needs to be a little chubbier.
Looks like your arms get really thin.
Yeah.
And that might be making everything around you look a little bit bigger. It's good though. You've marked the units and they look
Okay.
even. So.
Cool.
Alright, so for this last bit of today, for this activity, let me give you yet another piece of paper. Okay. And what I want you to do now is, just like my example, divide your paper in half down the middle, and it needs to be portrait oriented, so it needs to be tall, not wide. Use your ruler. Once you have your paper divided in half, I'm going to give you two different figures. Once again, sorry about the quality of yours.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, so you'll notice that one of these figures is doing an activity. They're in the middle of a motion. Yours? Yes, yeah. And the other one is standing still. They're static. You have a dynamic character and a static character. On both halves of your paper, you need to draw both of these figures the way we've done the past 2 days, but then you need to do what we've done today, and you need to indicate where the heads, the units of measurement are on this figure. I need to see, and you need to label that there are 7 or 7.5. And if you, my example is up here if you need to reference. We'll do this for about 10 minutes and then we'll clean up for today.
Mr. Dell, I have a question.
Yes.
With the way that mine is, like, oriented, should I just have her head start lower, or do I just make her arm come off the page?
Go ahead and make her arm come off the page because naturally, the way the 7 heads method of measuring a figure works is if the figure starts at the head and then goes 7 down, but since that's not a natural, her arm is up, still start her head at head 1 and then her arm will just be page.
Okay.
Her feet should still end at head 7.
Even though her knees are bent? Or should I just have it, like, have it, instead of the feet being flat, would it just, like, go there somewhere?
I would say so long as they end around 7. It might be a little bit above, but she should be 7 heads tall
Okay.
naturally.
Thanks.
Remember, we should be using dynamic line and static line to each respective figure. You have pictures of figures doing both. Okay, class, let's just get to to a stopping point for today, please. And make sure your name is on the back of this, and I'll come around and collect it. Thank you. This phone is good. Thank you. Have a good day. But take this hand out for you. Okay. Hello, class. Welcome to tomorrow. Okay. Today we are going to be starting our final project, which culminates from everything we've been learning this week about drawing figures. And I have this example here of what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to be making a comic strip. But first, to do that, we need to divide our paper into sections so that it looks like a comic. We've seen comics before in newspapers or maybe comic books. We're going to need 3 sections for this story. So one way you might want to divide your paper up is just by doing something like this. So you have 3 panels. Maybe you want to do something like there, and they're not really touching anywhere. So maybe something like this. You could do the opposite of what we have above and do something like that. Or maybe you want to make them a little bit more asymmetrical, like so. However you do it, you need to have 3 sections for your paper and for your comic strip. 3. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you each 3 different images to use. And don't mess with these pictures yet, because I'm going to explain what they're for and what we're going to do. Okay, so here, as you can see, this image is much larger than it is right now because I have it projected onto the screen. We have a man, let's say his name is Steve, and he has to be at work by 9 o'clock. Work by 9 a.m., presumably. And he's at home and he's not doing a lot, but he's kind of lounging around procrastinating, and he realizes it's like 8:57 and work is like 10 minutes away. He's gonna be late. Okay, so he looks at his watch, which you have a reference picture to look at of a man looking at his watch, and he realizes, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be late to work. Then he realizes he doesn't have access to his car because he's lost his keys. Of course. So he has to run to work. You also have a picture of a man running that you're going to be using for this. So he's running to work. We don't know if he's going to make it on time. And he does. He makes it to work on time. And he's going to be sitting in his office chair, smiling, because he arrived on time. So, today, the goal is to first have 3 sections, panels. These figures don't also, just as we've done all week, they do not need to be detailed. The last figure, we do need to kind of know that he made it to work on time, so give him a smile. We need to have the drawings done of our figures, the shapes, in either static or dynamic line. Some of your figures are doing actions like running. Some of them are doing static things like sitting. Keep that in mind when you're drawing. And if you get that much done today, the next thing is to draw what's around him. So you know the story, you know he's at home in the first panel because he's just lounging around when he should be getting ready for work and realizing his keys are gone. So go ahead and draw something that indicates he's not at work. So on mine, I have drawn a clock that shows him looking at his watch, so he's not where he needs to be. So if we get done with step 2 today, draw the environment. And by that point, we should be at the end of the period. That's as far as we're going to go today. So, you have your rulers and a pencil. I'm going to bring you a piece of paper. We'll go ahead and get started. We need 3 sections. house might be, you might draw picture frames of a family. You could draw him standing in his living room or kitchen. You could also add something, don't add a clock like I did, it's cheating. Do something that just indicates he is thinking about the time because he's going to be late. Some time to work on this. And we'll clean up a little bit before and maybe discuss for a minute about what we've done today and how we are illustrating this. Talk about our sections. Another thing to keep in mind is that these figures need to be convincing and they need to be look like they are proportionate and realistic because we have gone over that this week in using the 7 heads method. The arm shouldn't be 4 feet long and the man is 3 feet long. Class, let's wrap up today. You should have your figures drawn in 3 sections and you started maybe putting the environment down. And go ahead and put your names on those and I will collect them and you will get them back tomorrow when we work on them. I like the dog. Yes.
Aww. So nice.
Makes me think he might be at home. Hello class, welcome back today. Going to redistribute your drawings that we started yesterday. And you will see that I have written on our board for today that the goals are to finish the project and wrap it up. And that means to finish putting the environments down that we've already started placing. And then we're going to add color. That is the last goal. And then toward the end of the period today, we will continue talking about how we are using this imagery and how we are using these figures and the environment to tell the story. I like how you guys have divided up your papers. I forgot to mention, because you can't see my example from where you're sitting, I have labeled each section in the top corner of it 1, 2, and 3, so that it's a little bit easier to organize the panels. So go ahead and do that. Good distinction of dynamic line and static. Can tell which figure is running. So the things to keep in mind for being graded on this project when you're finished with it, you should have 3 figures, 2 of which, because you both have the same portion of static and dynamic figures, 2 figures should be static. 1 figure should be dynamic, and I should be able to tell the distinction between those. And it should be able to, through your drawing and what you've decided to do visually, be able to communicate what is happening in the story. He's going to be even more late. Once everyone has started to wrap up their 3rd panel, we're going to go ahead and clean up for today. Talk about what we've done. And what you don't finish, you need to take home, and this will be due when you come back next week. Okay, class, let's go ahead and wrap up today. Becca Grow, why don't you tell us things you have drawn to help us communicate this story?
Can I pretend I'm further along?
Yes.
Okay. When he's at his house, I drew his kitchen in the background so that you could tell his home.
Good.
And then while he's running, I drew a sidewalk that he's on and some houses in the background. And then at work, he's sitting in his office chair.
Good. And do you think that you have used a good amount of static lines versus dynamic lines in the figures that are moving and that aren't?
Yeah, but I feel like I kind of use dynamic lines too much in the static drawings.
Mm-hmm. I would say maybe just a little bit. That's an easy fix.
Yeah.
And in fact, you could just go back and darken the lines you want to keep and then just erase
Okay.
these dynamic light lines.
Yeah.
Very good. And Becca B, what have you done visually in the story, you think, to help us?
Well, I drew him with his dog while he's at home,
Mhm.
and he's kind of looking at his dog like, what are we supposed to do? And
The dog has
is-
only love to share.
Yes,
Mhm.
because he's perfect. And then he's running with a very determined look on his face, holding his cup of coffee that made him even more late. And then he's sitting in his office chair,
Mhm.
smiley and dandy, drinking his coffee that made him more late.
I like that you've gone ahead and added facial features. It helps us a lot. And I also love the dog. And I also love these motion lines to help us indicate that he's running. Very good. These are due Monday.